Nak dunia belajar yang lagi seronok tak? Jom masuk ikhlas. Dengan ikhlas nak belajar secara digital di mana-mana pun mudah dan mengujakan. Seronok kan? Di kat sini ada ramai cikgu berpengalaman yang sedia dan bersemangat untuk mengajar. Tak kira lah di mana-mana. Ada soalan ke tu? Tanya cikgu terus. Ini kan tuition dalam talian. Skor dalam peperiksaan dengan bantuan cikgu tuition. Nota ada, video ada, soalan latih di peperiksaan ada dan banyak lagi tau. Tengok tu, macam-macam aktiviti dan projek ada untuk anda sekali. Kuasai bahasa Inggeris dengan aktiviti bercerita dan menulis. Berlakon di Bengkel Bercerita. Dunia sains, teknologi dan matematik juga tak bosan dengan aktiviti yang sangat interaktif. Komuniti kelas ni besar. Inilah masanya nak belajar sama-sama dengan kawan baru secara dalam talian. Tak kiralah sama ada nak berbincang pasal subjek baru atau cabar mereka dengan kuis mingguan. Tengok siapa boleh jadi nombor 1. Belajar secara dalam talian boleh jadi seronok dan mudah. Kalau anda belajar dengan ikhlas, barulah boleh jadi peneraja masa depan. Menyukai dunia belajar lagi seronok. Ikhlas menanti anda.
Good afternoon, teachers and students. We will start shortly, so before that, please make sure you are seated comfortably. You can have your food and drinks with you. Do make sure you have a stable internet connections. If you are with us on Zoom, interact with us through the chat section, and if you are with us on YouTube, please use the comment sections. We would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. You can also ask us any questions you may have. Stay with us until the end to learn.
Nak dunia belajar yang lagi seronok tak? Jom masuk ikhlas. Dengan ikhlas nak belajar secara digital di mana-mana pun mudah dan mengujakan. Seronok kan? Di kat sini ada ramai cikgu berpengalaman yang sedia dan bersemangat untuk mengajar. Tak kira lah di mana-mana. Ada soalan ke tu? Tanya cikgu terus. Ini kan tuition dalam talian. Skor dalam peperiksaan dengan bantuan cikgu tuition. Nota ada, video ada, soalan latih di peperiksaan ada dan banyak lagi tau. Tengok tu, macam-macam aktiviti dan projek ada untuk anda sekali. Kuasai bahasa Inggeris dengan aktiviti bercerita dan menulis. Berlakon di Bengkel Bercerita. Atau menulis esei dengan hebat dalam bahasa Inggeris. Dunia sains, teknologi dan matematik juga tak bosan dengan aktiviti yang sangat interaktif. Komuniti
Welcome teachers and students to our 4th workshop focusing on essay writing brought to you by Maxis E-Class. I am Kakak Ain and I'm back and I'll be learning together with you in all remaining workshops. So I think I've missed out several workshops, including yesterday's workshops. For those of you who attended, can you share with me what it was about? You can share with me in the chat or comment section. Yeah, do share like what you learned yesterday or what you have learned last week. Okay, can anyone share? By the way, hi everyone. Hi Eva. Hi Jacinta. Hi. Yeah, I miss you too. I miss a lot of workshops. So can you share with me, Hamshini? Can anyone? Maybe like yesterday. What was yesterday's workshops is all about? Ke semua tidak datang semalam? We learn hook. Okay, hook. What do you mean by hook? Hi everyone. Hi. Okay. Yeah. Oh, story of the phoenix, power of the pen. Okay. Sound interesting. I think I must check out Maxis e-class portal right after this because I've missed out several workshops. Okay, do you know we can watch all previous workshops, the upcoming one, and other practice videos in Maxis e-class portal? If you don't know, now you know. So for those of you who are not on, yes, for those of you who are not on e-class yet, I welcome you to register for an account so you don't miss out. Okay, now let's gear up for today's workshops. For today, we have our all-time favorite person, Oprah. So on a scale of Oprah, can you share with me how are you feeling today? You can share in the chat or comment section which Oprah represent your mood right now. 11? Okay, you look like you're excited, Nurul. How about others? Which Oprah represent your mood? 11, 4 and 6, let's see. 4, okay, you have a lot of things to think. One, very excited, good. As for me, I think my whole energy level is at maybe number 8 or number 9, or mix between number 8 and 9. 8 is like because I'm very thankful and very grateful because I've recovered from COVID. But sometimes I feel like number 9. Yeah, I have flu. Actually, I have COVID, but yeah. To be frank, number 9. Why? Are you sad or are you, you need tissue? All right. Okay, thank you so much for sharing with me how you feel today. Yeah, if you feel absent-minded or distracted during the workshop, you can try stretching while in your seat, or you can also give a simple massage to yourself, or maybe you can have a simple snack or drink while listening to the workshop, okay? And you can always reach out to us in the chat or comment section if you need any help. All right. Now, today's workshop is our third essay writing workshops. Do you know in Maxis e-class competition, there is an essay writing category? If you are interested to submit an essay for the competition, type yes in the chat or comment section. Okay? All right, cool, good spirit, Hamshini. And then, do you also know that we have a Telegram group just for you? Come and join us in our student hub where you may find infinite information regarding Maxis e-class HIP StoryFest competition there. The closing date for the competition is on 31st August 2022. So don't shy, just try. All right, as you all know, all of our essay writing workshop will be facilitated by Guru Lab, which specialize in providing personalized English classes for students. Okay, now, today we have with us Cikgu Rachel, who will be guiding us to master the basics of writing skill. Cikgu Rachel, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Hello. It's so good to see a lot of people from Sarawak because I'm from Sarawak as well. So hi everyone. It is so nice to meet you, and I'm very, very excited to be sharing my knowledge with all of you today. And I really, really hope you guys learned something from today. All right. Okay, so how is everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing great. Yeah, Sarawakians, I see you. Yes. Oh, thank you, Hamshini. I am good. I'm very, very excited for today's workshop, actually, and I really hope you guys learned something today. All right, so I will be sharing my screen right now. And if at any point you guys don't understand or you need me to repeat something, or if you're not very clear, or if you have a burning question that you just cannot resist, please feel free to ask me anytime. Okay, I am here for you. All right, okay. So without further ado, let us take a look at today's. Yes. Right. Are you sure it's the morning? Yes, it's the afternoon, but sometimes we feel like we're in a perpetual state of morning, right? Okay. All right. So I will now be sharing my screen. I really hope you guys learned something today, because I know I'm very excited to be sharing this knowledge with all of you. So just a quick introduction about myself. Yes, no worries. We all make mistakes. There was once, I think, I don't remember. I mistook the time for my exam and I was late. Let that be a reminder to please be very careful with your timing. All right. So I am from Kuching, Sarawak. So it's great to see a lot of Sarawakians here. Hello. Hello, everyone. And I actually just graduated this year on my birthday. So if you can see, that's a picture of me with an ostentatious balloon bouquet, because I remember when I graduated, I told my mom, okay, I want a very big bouquet to carry around, so everyone will look at me that day, and it did. Thank you, Ashton. That means a lot. Yes, and I am very sure everybody will be graduating with flying colors as well. Right. So I graduated top of my class with a bachelor's in education. I have always been very passionate about teaching because my mom is an English teacher as well, and she made me write since I was 7. I remember one day she came, she was a UPSR marker, and she came back from school one day with a stack of UPSR papers, and I was sitting at the table minding my own business, and then she dropped the stack of papers in front of me, and she was like, okay, I want you to do these UPSR papers as practice. And I was like, I'm 7 years old. And she's like, no, that's no excuse. And I guess that's how it started. So I've been writing since I was 7. I'm still writing. I continue to write poetry, actually. And yeah, I specialize in teaching English as a second language. And I'm very, very passionate about teaching English and getting the word out about how fantastic this language is. Because I think a lot of people, we feel intimidated at the prospect of expressing ourselves in English. But I am here to tell you today that you have nothing to worry about. Because once you are able to find that voice within yourself and learn how to express yourself in writing or in speaking, you'll be fine. Yeah. And also currently I am pursuing a master's in education from as well. I'll probably stay here. I don't know whether I will do my PhD in but let's see. Right. And I love reading. I've been reading since I was 5 years old. I love writing. Okay. I also love baking. Everyone tells me my brownies are the best. So if any of you are ever, in the area, let me know and I will bake for you. Yes. And I also like making jewelry. I actually enjoy making earrings and rings. I'm not wearing any today, so I can't show you, but I'll show you next time. Yes, brownies. Perfect. Yes, I have a secret recipe, which I will tell you at the end of the class, if I remember. And also, I like romanticizing life. I think one thing that I want to highlight is when you romanticize life, you find inspiration in a lot of different parts of life. You find inspiration by just sitting in the bus and pretending like you're in a movie, or you find inspiration when you're walking the streets and the weather is just nice. The takeaway here is that there is inspiration everywhere. We can find inspiration everywhere as long as we romanticize life. And that is what I want you guys to remember this today. So it is intimidating to be writing and to learn how to express ourselves. We always worry that whatever we write or whatever we produce is not good enough. But as long as you know that it comes from within, you know that it is something that you put effort and time and creativity into, then nobody else can tell you that what you're writing is correct or wrong. Okay, I'm looking at all the comments. Okay, it's nice. Yes, very good, Karen. I love romanticizing life. Life is short. You only get one life, right? If you don't romanticize it and act like you're in a movie, who else is going to do that for you? Correct? Yeah, it's nice to meet everybody. And yes, so just to show you the pictures, that's me with my super ostentatious balloon bouquet. Yes, Eva, you raised your hand. Right, hello. Yeah, so that's me with a bunch of flowers and stuff. Yes, and that's also me with my students. So this time last year, I was doing my practicum in SMKDU. I don't know if there are any of you here from Bahasa Utama, but if you are, hello. Yes, and also I do teach little kids as well. So as you can see, that's an online class down there with little children, and they're also learning writing. So I tell you, there is no limit to what you can achieve with the English language. There's no limit to expression. There's no limit to the stories that you can create and write. And if anyone tells you that, don't listen to them. Listen to me. Okay? Yeah? All right. So let's continue with today's lesson. Oops. Spoilers. Okay, so what is creative writing? So a lot of us, creative writing is, as its name suggests. Thank you very much, Nurul. I'm very sure you'll be able to graduate like that one day as well. Yeah, and when that happens, I don't know where I'll be at the time, but if you want, you can contact me and I'll make sure to congratulate you. Okay, so as its name suggests, creative writing is any form of imaginative writing. As long as you create it, as long as it comes from you, and as long as you're using your imagination, then it is considered creative writing. Your creativity is the star here. Okay, so as opposed to different types of writing, such as pragmatic writing or academic writing, where you're writing for practical purposes, right? In creative writing, there is no format you have to follow. There are no restrictions. Your creativity is the start, and the only limit is you. Okay, so common examples of creative writing include poems, fiction, such as novels, short stories, vignettes, scripts and screenplays, right? And creative nonfiction. So creative nonfiction includes autobiographies, right? Biographies of famous people such as Barack Obama, yeah? And also memoirs. Memoirs are works written by people who, want to commemorate their life or people who have passed away, okay? All right, and when you think about creative writing, it is an art form just like everything else. So a lot of people may not consider writing to be a piece of art, but in reality, it is art because you are creating something. So you're literally creating something out of your imagination, right? Okay, so just because there's no tangible piece, like, there's no artwork or no picture, the words are your creation, correct? Yeah, so technically creative writing there's a very broad scope when it comes to creative writing. There is no limit to what you can achieve with creative writing. So anything that is original, expressive, anything that comes from your imagination, anything that you can think of and put down on paper, that is considered creative writing. Okay? Yeah? Okay, is everyone geared up so far? Everyone clear on what creative writing is? Okay? Yeah, when I was younger, when I was 7 years old, my first ever story was about this. I was 7, right? And children at the age of 7, we don't know a lot of things. But when I was 7, I wrote a story about a bear who travels the world. And even though at that point I had never been around the world, right? I'd only been to, actually, I don't think I had flown out of state at the time. But when I was 7, I was writing this story about the bear who traveled the world. And yeah, that was when it hit me. There's no limit to what you can achieve. There's no limit to what you can write. Who cares if you've never traveled the world? Act like you have, right? Okay. So now let's move on to the next part. So there are 6 basic elements of creative writing. And even though there is no limit to what you can include in your stories, these are the 6 elements that you should be mindful of including, right? And the first one would be your voice. So every author has a unique voice, okay? Just like how everyone has a unique speaking voice, how everyone has a unique singing voice. Like, for example, when I turn on the radio, I immediately know if that's Taylor Swift or if that's who else has a really, like, Shawn Mendes, he has a very notable voice as well. So you turn on the radio and you listen to these unique voices and you immediately know that is yes, Ariana Grande, correct. She has this, yeah, you all know what her voice sounds like, correct? And similarly, as you're singing and your talking voices, your writing voice is your unique writing style and tone as an author. Okay, so nobody determines this except for you. So personally, I like adding details, and I'm a very detailed, very emotional writer, I would say. So a lot of my pieces include like very small details about, let's say, like what the weather's like, or what something looks like, or you focus on the small things instead of the big picture, right? Okay, and in that case, that is my unique voice as a writer. So what is your unique voice as a writer? Are you detailed, or are you more of a, are you more of an author who goes straight to the point, such as, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but Ernest Hemingway, he has a very brisk way of writing. His writing style is very, very simplistic. So a lot of people think that in order to do creative writing, you have to be very flowery, you have to use a lot of bombastic words and a lot of, and let me tell you this, you do not have to. Okay, there is nothing you have to do in creative writing. You are the one who gets to determine what you want to include in your writing. You are the one who gets to determine what kind of voice or what kind of style you want to have as a writer. Okay, so personally for me, I enjoy adding details into my stories, right? Some of you, yes, okay, great, Ashton, you like going straight to the point. So some people may argue that if your writing is too simplistic, it's not considered creative. Don't listen to them. That is absolute rubbish. Okay, all right. So when you are comfortable with a certain style, right? Like some of my friends, they're more straightforward. Okay, so Nuha says, how do we know what kind of voice we have? That's a very good question. So personally, it took me, I think I had always known from a young age that I was always a more detailed person, right? I like focusing on the little details of things. Like I could spend ages just looking at something and like, analyzing every different aspect of it. Okay, so I think honestly, yes, what Ashini says is correct. You follow your heart, but also I think it comes with practice. So there's no right way to determine what kind of style you have if you don't actually start writing. So my advice to you, if you're a new writer, this is a great time to start discovering your voice as an author. So try to think about it like, okay, try to write about something and try to identify if you're more comfortable with being as descriptive or as bombastic as possible, or if you're someone who just goes straight to the point. Okay? Yeah. And also just a reminder, even though, it's great to use bombastic words, of course, right? It's great to, show off your vocab and add all these fancy words. But sometimes, in my experience as a reader and a writer and a teacher as well, a lot of people, they don't know how to use the words correctly. Now, if you're comfortable with using these words, then by all means, please go ahead. But if you do feel like you're trying a bit too hard and you're not very sure whether you're using the word correctly, then my advice is just stick to the stuff you know, right? Stick to what you're comfortable with. It is okay to explore beyond that, but make sure that you use those words correctly. Yes. Yeah? Okay? So when you use these bombastic words, make sure you're using them because they fit into the story and not because, okay, I need to show the world that I'm a very good writer. You don't have to do that. Yes. As long as you know that this story is something that you created with your own imagination, and as long as you know that this is your true voice as an author, then you're good to go, right? Okay. So next we have character. So obviously every story needs a vehicle to move, and your character is the vehicle that carries out the story. So in this case, actors, people, animals, inanimate objects. So I'm sure a lot of you have experience with autobiographies, right, where you write in the perspective of inanimate objects, like I am a computer, for example. Okay, so regardless of whether these objects are living or inanimate or dead, right, these are your characters. They act out your story. They carry out the story. So when you write a story, now, how many of you watch series or, yes, correct, Aku Sepasang Kasut, and then at the end something tragic always happens, like a cat runs away with the dog, a cat runs away with the shoe, or the shoe falls into the drain, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So when you have this, right, think about a few good questions to ask yourself when it comes to your character. Number one, ask yourself this: who are your characters? So you must be wondering, okay, teacher, like my characters are characters lah. It's beyond that. Now, how many of you are currently watching a series or a drama or reading anything? like watching anime or watching. Yes, okay, Caitlin, what are you currently watching or reading? Okay, and the rest of you can type out your answers as well. All right, so the reason I ask you this is because, okay, Jujutsu Kaisen, great. Now, what interests you about the characters in Jujutsu Kaisen? If your characters, now think about this, if your characters are boring, if your characters have no, there's no depth or development to your characters, then you wouldn't be invested in them, correct? Yeah? Okay, Percy Jackson, okay, that's great. Oh, Lawak Campus, yeah, I read that as well. I find it very, very funny. I think my favorite character in Lawak Campus is, I don't know, I really like Siko Song. I think his story is just very, very sad. Yeah, correct. You need a dynamic character. Correct, Cynthia, exactly. So in this case, you need a character who your audience can root for, right? Because if your character is unlikable or if your character doesn't have any depth or development, if your character is not interesting, nobody's going to be invested in your story, correct? Yeah. So most of the time, we enjoy stories because we feel a connection with the characters. So in this case, you need to ask yourself, when you're writing a story, who is your character? What is their motivation? Okay. Yeah. Who are they as a person? What, if I'm a reader, what would draw me to that character? Why would I be supporting your character instead of hating your character all the time? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next. So you have your point of view. Now, point of views are there are three different types of point of views. First person is quite common in creative writing, where you take on the story. For example, I saw him at the bus stop today. I wanted to say hi, but a part of me told me not to, for example. So in this case, first person POV, you'll be using I, me. You would be talking as if you are in the story. Understand? Okay. Yeah, and then you have second person. Now, second person is not so commonly used in creative writing. It's more used in self-help books or nonfiction, okay, where the author is talking to you. So, for example, you are the creator of your own life. Only you get to decide how your life goes. So that would be second person. Whereas for third person, it is split into three different types. You have third person limited. Yes, very good, Daniel. Exactly. First person, I POV. So in this case, you are in the story itself. So you are telling everything from your point of view. Okay, first person. Like right now, what I'm looking at curtains, I'm looking at all of you. Yeah. Second person is when you, as the author, you address the audience. When you say, you read this right now. Okay. And third person, you have number one, third person limited, where in this case, yes, very good, Zachary, third person is the narrator. So third person limited is where you only know certain parts you only know what is happening in the story. You don't know how the characters are feeling. So think of it as you watching a movie, for example. So you're watching a movie, but you don't know how the characters are feeling, or you don't know what emotions they're currently going through at the moment, or you don't know what is currently going through in their heads. So that is third person limited, because you are the third person, you are watching it, but your point of view is limited. Okay? And then you have third person omniscient, which I'm going to spell for you in the chat because it has a very fancy name. Third person omniscient. There you go. So third person omniscient, basically you are the creator of everything. So you know what is going on. So as opposed to limited, where you only know what you are looking at, third person omniscient allows you to know what the characters are thinking. Yes, Hamshini, you know what the characters are thinking. You know what the characters are feeling. You know what is going through in their heads. So in third person limited, for example, Hamshini looked at Huyen and laughed. But then if it's limited, that is the only thing I'm seeing, because I don't know what is going through in your head. But maybe if I'm a third person omniscient narrator, I will say, Hamshini looked at Huyen with humor in her heart. Okay. Now, when you look at these things from a limited point of view, you don't know what is going on. You don't know what is going on inside. But when you're a third person omniscient and you can tell everything that's going on, including what they're thinking about. Clear? Is everyone clear on the differences? Okay. So there are three main point of views. Number one, first person, where you are in the story itself. You are narrating the story from your point of view. Second person, where you're addressing the reader. You listen to me. That is second person. Yeah. And third person, which is split into two. Third person limited and third person omniscient. Okay. Everyone clear so far? Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. And next, we have Okay, at first I thought it was the words floating up there. It was like a bunch of thumbs. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the thumbs, everybody. All right, and next you have your setting. So what is your setting? Okay, so right now you have your unique voice as an author. You have your characters, you have your point of view. But what is the point of all this if you don't have the background? Correct. Like, okay, imagine it as a play where you're watching people on the stage and there's no background happening, right? It would be very boring, correct? So in the setting includes the place, the time period, and the environment in which your story is happening. Okay, so in the place, so what is happening? Is this story taking place in the woods? Is it taking place in the school? Or is it taking place in a courtroom, for example? Okay, or in a castle, like Hyun said, right? Maybe it is a story about princesses and dragons, right? In a palace, wherever, right? And then you have your time period. Is this story going to be set a long, long time ago, way before technology? Or is it going to be set in the future? Or is it going to be set right now in the modern day? Correct. Yes, Daniel, exactly. 12 a.m. at the park. So you have your time, 12 a.m., and you have your place at the park, right? So now the environment. When we say environment can mean like the literal environment, where you're talking about the things that are happening around you, or it can also mean what society is like. So for example, in this case, in modern society, people are a lot more accepting, right? But maybe in the olden days, people were quite, people had opinions regarding race and all that. Yeah. So the time period and the social setting, the environment in which your story takes place, it matters as well. For example, you guys know the story Pride and Prejudice? Pride and Prejudice happened a long time ago. But if we were to write a story in that time period, and then suddenly you were to introduce smartphones, would that make sense? It wouldn't, right? Because the audience would be like, okay, hold on. This is a long time ago. What are smartphones doing there? Right? Unless you take the story of Pride and Prejudice and you set it in the modern day setting. Okay, people do that as well. There are adaptations, retellings of old stories in the modern times. Okay, so this may or may not influence the plot. Yes, unless it's a time travel story. Okay, yeah. So in this case, it matters as well the setting that you set your story in, the people that your characters are surrounded by, the environment in which they live in. Like for example, in the Hunger Games, you guys know the Hunger Games, right? Okay, so in the Hunger Games, it is set in a dystopian society where this is postmodern, everyone is suffering, everyone is living in a totalitarian state, right? And there's this person who is rebelling against the higher ups. Understand? Yeah. Then next you have your plot. Now I'm going to tell you about the plot. So your plot is the story itself. It is the main event of your story. Your story is the plot. It's the sequence of events. Without your plot, there is no story. Okay? Yeah. So in this case, as a writer, okay, you have your character, you have your point of view, you have your setting. Now, what is going on in your plot? Why is the story being told? What is happening in the introduction? What is happening in the beginning? What is the most interesting thing about your plot? Okay, now I'm telling you this because later on there will be a section for you too. Okay, blind man got hit by a car. Okay. Okay, Hyun, that's very interesting. So what you can do, yes, murder mystery. You guys know the movie Knives Out? I love that movie. That's my favorite movie. I remember when the pandemic first started, I watched that. That was the first movie I watched. And after that, I was like, okay, what do I do for the rest of the pandemic? Anyways, yeah. So in this case, okay, very good. So think of all those stories. All those stories, Squid Game, Parasite, Zombie Apocalypse, all these stories, they have a plot, right? And after this, we're going to analyze what the plots are, all right? Okay, he did a backflip to avoid the car. Okay, that's very, very interesting. Okay, Ashton, keep that in mind. Murder theme book. Okay, hold that idea here. Okay, now next we have our theme. So when you have your story, obviously there is a lesson to be learned from the story, correct? So in this case, the underlying meaning or the message of the story. So what does your story want to tell? Yeah, what is it going to tell people? Okay, so in this case, Ashton, you mentioned that you wanted to write a murder story. What is the theme of your murder story? Is it like, are you talking about the consequences of, let's say, maybe it's a friend who was betrayed by another friend? Yeah. So maybe your theme here is that the betrayal of friendships, for example. So themes can encompass a lot of things. Yes, okay. That's a lesson that you want to learn, that we should not be greedy or we will lose everything. Okay, maybe that's a lesson that you want to include in your story. That is fine as well. Okay, so it can be about a lot of things. Okay. Essentially, when you have your plot, you want to analyze what you're trying to tell people from your plot, which is your theme. Okay, so we have a voice, which is your unique style as a writer, your character who carries out the story, your point of view, your setting, your plot, which is the story itself, and the theme, which is the underlying message of the story. Okay, now is everyone clear before we proceed to the next slide? Everyone okay so far? Okay, great. I love seeing all the messages in the chat. I think it's great that, yes, great. Let's go to the next one. Right, Freytag's plot pyramid. So Gustav Freytag was a German professor, and he came up with this basic pyramid of plot structure. So remember just now, a lot of you had a lot of great ideas about the stories that you want to write, murder mysteries, Squid Game, Parasite, all that existing stories, right? Now, if you notice, every story follows this pyramid, okay? Some of them might not, completely follow 100%, but you always have these basic elements in your story, okay? So let's take a look. We have the exposition. Your exposition, we have the rising movement, we have the climax, falling action, and then we have the denouement. Now, fun fact, denouement is French for untying the knot. And why is it called untying the knot? We will find out very soon. So let's take a look. In our exposition, your exposition is also known as your introduction, okay? Where your characters, your background, and your setting are established here. Meaning, this is where you lay out all the groundwork for your story, right? Then next, we have the rising movement, which is the build-up of the plot. So once you've already established your introduction, what happens after that? You need to build the rest of your story, correct? So you build the rest of your story, you talk about the story, the conflict that the characters are experiencing. So a problem that is happening in the beginning, it starts growing later on, okay? Yeah? Yes, Hamshini, thank you very much. Okay, so again, exposition, also known as the introduction, you set all your groundwork there, and then you proceed later on to your build-up. So once you've already set all the groundwork, you need to build your story up, correct? You need to talk about your characters, you need to talk about the problems that they are facing, right? And then you have, when you climb a mountain, you finally reach the top. What happens after that? So the top of this mountain is also known as the climax, right? Which is known as, yes, put a flag in it, the point of highest tension. So, Ms. Rachel, what does that mean? So this means that this is the most important part of the plot. This is everything that changes after this. Okay? So think about it this way. You're going up a mountain. You're setting the groundwork. You're doing all your prep work, getting all your stuff, putting your backpack and everything. And then you're climbing up the mountain. And as you climb up the mountain, there are problems that you're experiencing. And then finally, you reach the top. You reach the top of the mountain. And that's the most interesting part of your entire story. This is where most of the things in your story happen. This is where everything changes afterwards. Okay? So when you reach the top of the mountain, what happens from there? What goes up must come down. So when you have your highest, everything that is happening in the climax, everything changes as a result. So where do we put all the changes? We put the changes in the falling action, where after that, everything changes as a result of the climax, right? Where all your characters experience changes because of what happened in the climax, okay? Right? And last but not least, remember just now we mentioned denouement, which means untying the knot, unraveling the knot. Denouement is another word for resolution. Yes, which is the ending. Okay? So you've already created a bunch of knots, a bunch of twists and turns in your story. So now you have to unravel everything. You have to untie everything and come to the conclusion. So that is your denouement, the resolution, where you reach the ending. It can be happy, it can be sad, it can be a cliffhanger. Personally, I like leaving my stories. I'm a very tragic writer. I like writing very emotional stuff. So usually my endings are either suspenseful or they're very sad. Correct. Which I feel like is very bleak, but that's my style. So like, what is your style? Do you prefer a happy ending, or do you prefer to leave your readers wondering what happened next? Why the story suddenly stopped? Yeah? Okay? Yes. Okay, correct. Like in Vismi's case, a poor man turned into a rich man. Okay, so now what we're going to do is you are going to have the chance to try this yourself. Let me look at the time. Okay, we have plenty of time, don't worry. Right, so now I want you guys to think of a very common story. something that you know. And we're going to try and apply that story into this pyramid. Okay, I like having massacres. In my murder story, everyone dies. Ooh, even the murderer? I think the murderer should die as well, right? Yeah, okay. So in this case, right, okay, let's think of a very common story. Okay, any examples from the audience? A very common story. Okay, all right. Okay, how about, okay, let's pick a good old one. Okay, how about Cinderella? Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so you must be wondering, okay, Miss Rachel, Cinderella, really? Okay, right? So in this case, let's take a look. What happens in the introduction? Come on, everybody knows Cinderella, right? What happens in the introduction of Cinderella? Let's go.
Cikgu Rachel,
Yes.
if I may start.
Yes, of course you
I
may start.
remember during like Cinderella at first, we were being introduced that she is being bullied somehow by her stepmother.
Yes, very good. Good job. All right, so in the beginning, we are introduced to Cinderella, right? And she is, what happens to Cinderella? Correct, her mother died, right? Cinderella's mother died. Her father remarried, and what happens? And she is bullied by her stepsisters, right? Stepsisters and her stepmother. Correct, a wicked woman. You're absolutely right. So in this case, we are introduced to Cinderella's character, correct? And we are also introduced to her background. Okay, we know what's happening. Okay, we know that she is under, she is being bullied by her stepsisters and her stepmother, right? Okay, now, yes, they ask her to do the house chores. So that is all established in the exposition. Okay, brilliant, everybody. All right, so everyone knows the story of Cinderella very well, right? So now let's get the ball rolling. Let's go to the rising movement. What happens next? Okay, right, she befriends animals. Okay, that's cool. All right, you guys remember that, yeah. Cinderella befriends animals. Hold up. So if you'll notice, in the rising movement, there is a lot of stuff happening right before you reach the climax of your story. So let's take a look at that. Okay, Cinderella befriends a bunch of animals, right? Okay, what else? So what happens one day? Someone introduces something. Come on, what is it? Yes, there is a ball. Very good. Yes. So the ball is, a royal ball is happening and everyone is invited to the palace to take a look at this super handsome prince whom nobody has ever seen before. Correct? Yes, the royal ball. And obviously Cinderella wants to go to the royal ball, but what do her stepsisters and her stepmother say? Is she allowed to go to the ball? Yes, sabotage. Yes, she's not allowed to go to the ball. So what does she do? She throws herself on the rock and starts crying, correct? The royal ball happens, but Cinderella is not allowed to go to the ball. And then what happens after that? Yes, so while she's crying, she's like, oh, why is this happening to me? Her godmother appears, correct? Her godmother appears, and what does she do? A fairy godmother, yeah? Yes, her fairy godmother appears and? Correct. Yes, Joanne, thank you. She had a glow up. The fairy godmother appears and gives Cinderella a glow up. Okay, using magic, very good. But what is her condition? What's the condition here? Okay, yes, she didn't have a vehicle, so like there was a bunch of magic happening with the pumpkin and the carriage and the animals turning into a horse and everything. So what was the condition that, yes, go home before 12? Correct. That Cinderella returns before 12. Yes, very good. Okay, so usually during the drafting process, my drafting process looks insane as well. Like there's a lot of stuff happening. Okay, yes, very good. Glass slippers. So what happens? So Cinderella shows up to the ball. She pulls up to the ball, right? And then Cinderella shows up, and the prince is immediately enamored. He's like, oh, my dream woman is right there. Correct? Yeah. And the prince falls in love with her. And what do? They dance all night. Okay, and then while they were happily dancing, what happens? Okay, yes, she saw the time and she was shocked. It's almost 12. And what does she do? She runs, right? She runs very, very quickly. And what happens when she runs? Now, we have all this stuff that is happening, correct? Glass slipper fell. Now, does the glass slipper falling, does it belong in the rising action or does it belong in the climax? Very good, Hamshini. Yes, that is the climax because that is the most interesting part of the story. So, Cinderella notices the time. Okay, Cinderella runs and her glass slipper falls off. You know, one thing I've always found very funny, you know what? We'll talk about that later. But yes, Cinderella runs and her glass slipper falls off. And what does the prince do, everybody? He goes into this, yes, he goes on this entire mission to try on the foot, try on the slipper on every female foot in the kingdom, right? Yes, dedication. Because a lot of men don't have that anymore. Right, next. She said no, come back. Okay, great. So, right. So that is the climax. Cinderella runs, her glass slipper falls off. Now, what happens in the falling action? So the prince starts looking for her everywhere, right? And then eventually he shows up where? He shows up at her house, right? And he's like, hey, is there a girl? Like, can you bring out all the girls in your house? And the stepmother's like, okay, sure. But yes, very good. Made everyone try everywhere and makes everyone try the glass slipper. Right, okay. And then yes, the stepmother came and didn't want to let Cinderella try on the slipper. But then I don't know, somewhat the prince finds her. The prince is like, hey, you want to try the slipper? And she's like, yes. And then she tries the slipper, and what happens? And it fits perfectly, correct. And then cringe. Okay. And then finally, what happens in the end? They live happily ever. Oops, spelling. Happily ever after. Okay, so yes, one thing a lot of you mentioned, right? Logic. You know, one thing I've always wondered, right? If the slipper really fit her perfectly, how did it fall off in the first place? So think about it, right? And then, like in that case, like if everything went back to normal, her dress and everything, how come the slipper didn't go back to normal? True or not? Right? But see, when you're older, when you're younger, you know, you take all this, you took all this, all these ideas, right? And then when you're older, you look back and you're like, hold on, wait a second, right? So one thing that you guys can try doing after class is you can go ahead and rewrite a popular fairy tale story or a popular story. It's up to you, and then try to give it a twist ending. Yeah. So it is, yes, Zachary, you're absolutely right. Creative writing doesn't require rhyme or logic or sense. You know, I remember when I was writing a story once, and it was about a fisherman whose daughter was lost at sea, I think. And then apparently he heard her cries from 10 kilometers away. And then when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, 10 kilometers is very far. Like, how can anyone hear anything from 10 kilometers? Yes. Yeah, that's creative writing for you, isn't it? Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your responses. So everyone is clear on each of the points of the plot pyramid, correct? So you can actually take this. Yes, the fisherman had supersonic hearing. So you can actually take this and you can apply it to all your favorite plots. Parasite, Squid Game. Try to identify each of these parts, and let's see what happens. Okay? Yes. Right. I think like the revenge at the end was very satisfying, right? Okay, so we're going to clear this, right? Again, thank you very much, everybody, for all your amazing responses. So now let's take a look at this. So introductions, right? So first sentences are doors to worlds. So in the hands of a great writer. Now, when you start reading something, obviously you want to reel your readers in, correct? You want to make sure that they are from the beginning, they are hooked to your story, right? So opening lines, like for example, grab your attention like a starter's gun, right? When you hear that gun right before you're about to run, boom. So that will make you pay attention, correct? Yeah? So in this case, let's take a look at the first sentence. Yes. All right. Let's take a look at, okay, so let's see. Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure. Right, so this is the opening of one. I don't know if you guys know this book. If you guys know the book, please type it in the comments. That would be amazing. All right, so what do you think of this opening line? Kakain.
Hi, yes.
Hello. So when you read this, right, mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure. What do you think? What comes to mind when you read this?
Murder mystery.
Murder mystery. Okay,
Automatically.
right.
Then, yeah, for me, I'm interested to know what happened, what had happened, or what will happen.
Correct. Right. Why is that? What part of this sentence makes you feel this way?
I think the later part,
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning until the end. Because first, the writer established like mother died today, and then he picked my interest by saying, oh, maybe yesterday, I can't be sure.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Yeah, so it kind of gives you this impression that there's something going on with the writer. Okay, some of you mentioned the writer is depressed, right? Maybe the writer, maybe he feels some type of way because he doesn't know exactly when his mother died, right? Okay, fantastic. All right, now let's take a look at the next line. This story so far, in the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move, right? When you see this opening, what do you think of? Okay, some of you agree. Yes, someone mentioned teacher. Yes, I'm here. How can I help you? Right, so when you read this introduction, right? Okay, so some of you, how old am I? You will find out soon. Okay, right. So in this case, yes, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. So in this case, some of you say, yes, very good. The current chaotic state. Right now, there's a lot of chaos happening in the world. So when people think about it, they're like, okay, who created the universe in the first place and why did they do that? Right? Okay. Are you 25? Yes, I am. How do you know? Is it obvious that I'm 25? Is it the skin? All right, let's take a look at the next one. Okay, this is actually from the restaurant at the end of the universe. I look like 18. Oh my goodness, I'm going to screenshot that. I'm gonna tell everybody my skincare routine is working, guys. Okay, right. Thank you very much. Yes, I am young because my students keep me young. Like all of you. You always make me laugh, Yeah. Okay, next slide. It was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. What does that mean? What does that mean, everybody? Clocks 13? But there are only 12 numbers on the clock. What's going to happen next? Okay, so when you read this line, what happens? What do you think of? Come. Okay, chaos. Why chaos, Daniel? Aliens taking over the world. Okay, great. So in this case, clock striking 13, that's such a ridiculous notion. And it makes you feel like, okay, there's something completely different. Correct? Yeah? Okay, wonderful, everyone. Okay, 13 means 1. Okay, that works as well. Yeah, 24-hour system, right? Yes. Do I like Mat Kilau? I am okay. I think he is, I think it's a very interesting story, but I don't really remember it. But I remember it, yeah. Yes, I have a lot of stories in my head, so sometimes I'm like, I don't really remember which is which, right? But do you like Mat Kilau? Tell me about it, right? Okay, next. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. What does that mean? What does that mean, everybody? Does anyone know where that's from? Okay, determination. Why determination, Daniel? Okay, a statement. Very good, Hamchini. What kind of statement is it? What does it mean? What is this statement saying? Okay, great. Statement. Yes, this statement is saying if you have money, you must want a wife. Okay, men with luck, 100% gets women. Okay, that's a very good interpretation. Yes. Okay, and finally, let's take a look at the last one. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a giant insect. Can you imagine that happening to you? Waking up one morning and you're like, hold up, where are my hands? And then suddenly you're replaced with like insects. Ugh, I can't imagine. Right, okay? Yeah? So in this case, very good, Zachary, sci-fi. This is from The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. So all these opening lines are very, very, are from various books, okay? So you can go ahead and take a look at them. I will share them with you, but, oh, it's 3:50. Okay, we gotta rush. Okay, let's go. But when you see this, you understand the impact of a very strong opening line, okay? So that's why a lot of people mention, okay, it's so hard to start writing because the beginning is always the hardest part to start. And that's true for me as well. Sometimes I have this great idea in my head, but I don't know how to put it out because I don't know where to start, right? So, teacher, how do we start introductions? I'm going to tell you, right? Let's take a look. Hey, why is the... Yes, there we go. All right. So, do introductions even matter? Of course they do, right? Because in the beginning, that is what determines whether or not we will stay for the rest of the story. Yeah. Wait, can everyone hear me? Am I lagging? Hello, testing, 1, 2, 3. Yes. Okay, great. All right. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Because I see all the no's in the chat and I'm like, eh? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we don't want basic introductions that tell the readers what is happening. You don't want to be like, once upon a time there was a woman. I mean, that is a basic introduction, but I know you guys can do better than that. So we want out of the box introductions that show the readers what is happening. Right? For example, instead of saying there's a woman, maybe you can say her brown hair fluttered in the wind or whatever, right? Okay. Now, this is not to say that, sometimes basic introductions, it's not a bad thing. But a lot of the times, what separates a great introduction from a basic one is you don't want to tell your readers what is happening straight away, right? You want to show them, you want to set the scene, you want to slowly ease them into the story, get them interested in who this woman is, right? Okay, in this case, her brown hair is a wig, okay? Imagine a story that starts like that. We see a woman walking on the street adjusting her brown hair, and then suddenly a gust of wind blows the brown away. Can you imagine that? That would be hilarious. I would love to read that story, right? Can you imagine? Yeah. Once I had a principal, he has a toupee, right? Toupee is the male version of a wig. And I think once during sports day, he was wearing a cap. And then when he took off the cap, his toupee went sideways. Still very fun. Anyways, so keep in mind, so as an introduction, as a reader, what grabs your attention and keeps you interested in the story? What makes you feel like, okay, I have to read more, I have to know more. What happened to the lady with her brown wig? What is happening, right? And as a writer, how do you hook the reader's attention? How do you draw the reader in and tell them, come here, read my story? How do you tell them that, right? And always show, not tell. Teacher, what does that mean? What do you mean by show, not tell? Now, you're telling people what happens. For example, the wind blew away her wig, right? But if you show them, you can talk about how this lady is like frantically trying to keep her wig on her head, for example. Yeah, okay? So let's take a look at the next slide. Right, so introduction to introductions. There are a lot of ways to start an introduction, right? And number one, yes, in reality, she's bald. I cannot imagine. There'll be an incredible story to read. If any of you ever read that, please let me know. I would love to read it. Send me a copy. Okay. Now, number one, quotes, novels, TV shows, celebrities. Anyone can give a quote, right? And you can pull quotes from anywhere. So this is a very common way to start your story. Okay, right? For example, in this case, quotes. Do I remember a quote? Who do I remember? Elon Musk. You guys know Elon Musk, right? Okay, Albert Einstein. Well, Albert Einstein talks about how something about creativity. I actually don't remember. Yes, Elon Musk. Correct. The owner of Tesla. Personally, I've always wanted a Tesla car. Maybe one day. But anyways, right. So Elon Musk recently talked about AI, artificial intelligence, and he mentioned that artificial intelligence is like summoning the demon. So if you want to talk about, if your story is one that talks about artificial intelligence, sci-fi, and you want to talk about the bad effects of artificial intelligence, you can use that quote. Yeah? Okay? And then next, you have statistics. So does anyone know any fun facts that they want to drop in the chat? Okay, for example, did you know your heart is the size of a fist? right? That is an interesting fact you can share. And for those of you who are interested in murder mysteries, did you know that, okay, don't do this to people, right? But did you know that if you shoot someone, not shoot someone literally, like with a syringe, you know, a medical syringe, right? If you inject air into someone's system with a medical syringe, you're shooting an air bubble into their blood system, right? And it can actually kill the person because it makes it look like a heart attack. Yes, right. So you can think of that as well. Do you know almonds are a part of the peach family? Oh, I did not know that. That's actually very interesting. Yes, thank you. Yes, great. All those facts in the chat. Did you know that if you safely make it to the airport, like in a car, you have already surpassed the most dangerous part of air travel? Yes. And do you know that hippos, they're way more dangerous than sharks? You guys know that? Yes. All right. Okay. So you can actually start your stories with statistics as well, or fun facts. And you can do that in such a way as, do you know that water is colder than the sun? Oh, I did not know that. Right? Do you know an ostrich eye is bigger than its brain? I did not know that either. I think that's why when they say, like, you know, you have the brain of an ostrich, like, yeah, it's not a very nice thing to say, right? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I love how everybody's like dropping facts in the chat. That's amazing. Right, next, narratives. So what better way to introduce a story than a story, right? So for example, in this case, earlier you talked about the lady with her wig flapping in the wind, right? Okay, so that can be a narrative as well. You can use a story to start a story where you're setting the story by talking about it in the introduction. So this is a very common way of starting stories where you set the story with details of the story itself. Yeah, like a flashback. Yes, very good, Daniel. Yeah. And then next, you have your questions. So rhetorical questions, these are often rhetorical, and they force your reader to think and engage with the story. For example, if I ask all of you, would you rather, let me think. Would you rather know when you die or how you die? Let's think about that. Personally, I would want to know when I die so I can, you know, sort out all my affairs in order. Yes, all right. Hannah, thank you. That's a very nice thing for you to say. It takes one to know one, Hannah. Yes, right. Okay, so in this case, yeah, you want to know, okay, Aisha, interesting. You want to know how you die. Yeah, why? Okay, Huyen, I really hope you don't die tomorrow because I'm looking forward to reading your stories. Okay, right, next, setting. So remember setting? Similar to the narrative technique, setting the scene of your story allows readers to anticipate what is coming. When you talk about what is happening in the story and what is going on, right? And then last but not least, you have your details. And similar to the setting technique, you focus on the small details. For example, if you're talking about that lady with the wig, you can talk about how strands of brown artificial hair flap in her eyes. You can talk about that, right? Okay, so in this case, the readers will be wondering, okay, why all this focus on the hair? What's going on, right? Okay, yeah. Now, next. Let's go to the next one. Yes. So these are some common ways to start introduction. Number one, quotes only work now. When you do quotes, remember, quotes only work if they're interesting. If your quotes are boring or if your quotes state the obvious. Like, for example, Diana was still alive hours before she died. Obviously, right? Like, yeah, it's like, did you know that every 60 seconds, a minute passes? Yeah, it's like that, right? Okay. So in this case, quotes only work as a starter if you're interested. But if you do want a humorous approach to your story, you can use a quote like that as well, a super ridiculous quote. And sometimes it works because sometimes the readers will be so, you know, they'll be so shocked by it. They'll be like, okay, what is the story? Where is this story going? I need to know more. Yeah. And next, the Elon Musk quote mentioned earlier, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. Elon Musk felt that way because he felt like, you know, we're giving a platform to, yeah, greater atrocities committed by AI. So you guys can actually check that out as well, right? And then we have statistics. So statistics like all the fun facts that you guys mentioned earlier. So did you know? So some emotional triggers are more effective than others because as human beings, we're wired to listen or to remember things that are very weird. Correct? Yeah? Like for example, some of you mentioned earlier, yeah. all these interesting quotes. I'm going to remember them after, after the class finishes. I'm going to be like, yeah, there are 293 ways to make change for $1. Okay? Yeah? So next, in this case, so in the chat box, would anyone like to type an introduction with a quote or a statistic? If you would, please go ahead and drop that in the chat. Okay? All right. So think about a story that you would like to plot. So some of you mentioned just now murder mysteries and all these stories. So would you like to plot any of these introductions with a quote or a statistic? Okay, would anyone like to try? So in this case, if you drop your answers in the chat box, I will. Okay, old people can't backflip. Actually, you'd be surprised. I recently came across this couple on Instagram, and they're both 60 and 55, I think, but they are, they're incredibly fit. I think they're way more fit than I am. It's very, very amazing. Until you spread your wings, you have no idea how far you can fly. Okay, Hamshini, that's a great introduction. So how are you going to continue the rest of that story? Okay, if you have this, right? Okay, I'm gonna annotate that as well. I think that is lovely. All right, let's drop that quote. Okay. All right, until you spread your wings, you have no idea how far you can fly. So, what kind of introduction would this quote work for? Okay, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Okay, look strong when you're weak, look weak when you're strong. Ooh, okay. All right, okay, so because we are running out of time, let us run. Do you know the color red is used in many brands as it triggers the subconscious urge to buy it? I'm wearing red today. Yeah. Okay, all right. So think about, okay, so thank you everybody for sharing your quotes, right? So in this case, right, like earlier, Hamshini mentioned, until you spread your wings, you have no idea how far you can fly. So you can actually talk about that, like, let's say in an introduction where you want to talk about the idea of having big dreams or not giving up, correct? And Zachary, in your case, the color red, you can actually talk about, that can actually be your starter, where you're establishing. Do you know that skydiving without parachutes is a one-time thing? Oh, I did not know that. Okay. Right. So let's take a look at the next one. So some common ways to write an introduction. Number 2, narrative. In May of 1940, as war raged across Europe, a squad of infantrymen from the famous Manchester Regiment encroached upon the village of Lepinette in northern France, except for one. So what is going on here? How come one dude was missed out? So in this case, stories work so well because as human beings, we're wired to respond to stories, correct? Yeah, because he did. Or maybe he stayed behind to write a letter to his one true love. We never know, right? Okay? So a good story told well is still one of the most gripping forms of entertainment. So if you are able to start your story with a very interesting narrative, like in this case, right? You're setting the story. Then what's going to happen? And it keeps readers interested because they're wondering, okay, why is this man the only one who didn't make it? Like, why is he not in the village? What's going on, right? Okay, now next. Questions. Again, rhetorical questions like the one mentioned earlier, the one about dying. Okay, Daniel, that's lovely. The greatest glory in living lies in not in never failing, but falling, but in rising every time we fall. Thank you for the honesty, Daniel. Yes. Yeah. So now let's look at rhetorical questions. Would you rather have loved and lost or to never have loved at all? So in this case, right, when you ask your readers a hypothetical question, you're forcing them to be invested in your story because you're forcing them to put their thoughts into your story, right? In this case, right, asking questions poses a scenario to the reader and you invite them to kind of put themselves into the story, right? Okay. Yes, romantic story. Okay, you would rather have loved and lost. That's nice, Julian. That's a very nice sentiment to, yeah, I think, yeah, my answer to that is still divided. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so because we don't have time, we're going to skip the next. All right, skip to the next one. And some common ways to write an introduction. Okay, I don't want to be emotionless. That's wonderful. And you know what would be a great way to practice expressing your emotions? Writing. Yeah? Okay, so setting. By 2017, the world economy has collapsed. Food, natural resources, and oil are in short supply. The police state divided into paramilitary zones, rules with an iron hand. Okay, so in this case, setting. You're setting the scene for what is happening. You're setting a disastrous scene where everything is under a totalitarian state, right? Okay, so well-written setting can help your readers understand what is going on. Okay, so when you're writing a story about war or anything, this can be incredibly effective because you want people to imagine just how terrible the world can be in such a state, right? And next, details. This is my personal favorite. This is actually the example of an introduction that I wrote myself, right? So the line goes in. I press the end call button. I am trembling, although it is a warm Malaysian afternoon. I have no reason to be. One more time, I whisper desperately to myself. My hands have lost all function, but I will them to dial the numbers again. So when you add details like that, what happens? So a lot of times we focus on the big picture. We focus on all the major things that are happening, but we don't take time to look at the resonance of all these little details. Because if you notice, the little details can actually spell a lot more. So in this case, you kind of know that this lady, right, whoever she's calling, she's very nervous, she's very frantic. So in this case, you have these details and you want to draw your reader into the world that you are building. Correct? Which one? The one more time? Oh, one more time. That is actually not from a book. That's actually I wrote a story about this woman dialing the numbers. Yes. So that's not from a book. I'm very flattered that you think it's from a book. Thank you. Right. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Right. So altogether, there are a total of 6 ways to start your introduction. But again, the takeaway here is there is no right or wrong way to start your introduction. So I don't want you guys to think that, oh, I don't have a quote, or I can't think of a statistic, or I don't know how to write a narrative. That is fine, right? Remember, ultimately, you get to determine what you want to write. And that includes your introduction. So the examples in the previous slides, all these, right? All these quotes, statistics, narrative, setting, all these are just examples, okay? But there is no right or wrong way to do creative writing as long as it is creative. Okay, yeah, so this is the takeaway here. If you take away one thing from today's workshop, let it be that. Let it be that you remember there is nothing, there's no right or wrong way. These are just suggestions. Okay, Hamshini, I hope to publish a book someday. I really keeping my fingers crossed. In the meantime, yes, I believe that all of you, there is a writer in all of you. There is a unique writer voice that you just need to unleash. Okay, right? So if there's one thing you take away from today's workshop, let it be that. Let it be that you are allowed to write however you want. There is no right or wrong way. Understand? Okay? Yeah. So some questions to ask yourself as you write. Okay, let's do a very quick one. Will your readers care about your characters and your piece? Are these sufficiently developed? Okay? When your readers are invested in your story, because we are invested in people who are reflections of ourselves. So in this case, you want to make sure that your readers are engaged in whatever you have to say. So you have to make sure that as the writer, you create a character that is worth caring about. And number 2, is the language clean and coherent? Does it flow smoothly? Because in this case, if your story is very clunky, no matter how unique it is, if the story doesn't flow well and it's very hard to follow, people will find it difficult to invest in your story. Okay? And most importantly, ask yourself this: are you writing as authentically as possible? Does it reflect your voice as an author? And if it doesn't, if you feel like, okay, this is not really me, ask yourself, how can you find ways to make it more you? When you read something, how do you know that it is your work, right? Okay, next. But why is it not? Yes, and does the imagery work? Now, imagery is descriptions and images that you add into your story. All right, so does it work? When you are explaining all these details, can the reader envision what is happening? Okay, if it can, then it works. Okay, and number 4, is the piece engaging? Can you follow what is happening? Like, is it interesting enough to keep people interested in your story? Or do you think people are just going to be like bored halfway through? Right? Okay, next. What is the takeaway from your piece? Now remember, what is the one thing, like I mentioned earlier, the takeaway from today's workshop? Just remember, creative writing has no boundaries. The only limit is your imagination. So what is the takeaway from your story when you're writing it? How will your readers feel after reading it? Like, what is the lesson that they are going to hold? Is it a story that they are going to remember for the rest of their lives? And last but not least, Is your piece unique? Have you fully explored the depths of your creativity? Do you think this is your best work yet? And have you said what you want to say as an author? Like when you write this, do you think that you have achieved what you set out to do? Okay, right. So before we end here, do you guys have any questions for me? Oh, I like Geronimo Stilton. So I remember when I was younger, I was obsessed with his books. I wanted to collect everything. I was like, oh. Okay, great. Now let's take a look. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the workshop and I really hope you guys learned something. Right. And now I will pass it on to, yes, Kai. Thank you very much, everybody. And yep.
All right, everyone. Yeah, before we end, one final thing. There are e-certificate for those of you who joined. So you just need to, yeah. Okay, yeah, you just need to scan the QR code or the link that been shared in the chat. And just a reminder, you need to complete the form before 5 p.m. tomorrow. And please make sure that your email address is correct, because we will email the e-certificate within 5 working days. And you can also check your spam or junk folders, about sometimes our email will end up there. And you can also ask any questions on Student Hub Telegram group if you have any issues. Okay? All right, thank you. Have you guys scanned the QR code? Okay, I'll take this as a yes. See you all again very soon. Thank you and have a good afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Nak dia belajar yang lagi seronok tak? Ha, jom masuk ikhlas. Dengan ikhlas nak belajar secara digital di mana-mana pun mudah dan mengujikan. Seronok kan? Dekat sini ada ramai cikgu berpengalaman yang sedia dan bersemangat untuk mengajar. Tak kira lah di mana-mana. Ada soalan ke tu? Tanya cicit ke terus? Ini kan tuition dalam talian. Skor dalam peperiksaan dengan bantuan cikgu tuition. Nota ada, video ada, soalan latih peperiksaan ada dan banyak lagi tau. Tengok tu, macam-macam aktiviti dan projek ada untuk anda sekali. Kuasai bahasa Inggeris dengan aktiviti bercerita dan menulis. Berlakon di Bengkel Bercerita. Atau menulis esei dengan hebat dalam bahasa Inggeris. Dunia sains, teknologi dan matematik juga tak bosan dengan aktiviti yang sangat interaktif. Komuniti kelas ni besar. Inilah masanya nak belajar sama-sama dengan kawan baru secara dalam talian. Tak kira sama ada nak berbincang pasal subjek baru atau cabar mereka dengan kuis mingguan. Tengok siapa boleh jadi nombor 1. Belajar secara dalam talian boleh jadi seronok dan mudah. Kalau anda belajar dengan ikhlas, barulah boleh jadi peneraju masa depan. Menyukai dunia belajar lagi seronok. Ikhlas menanti anda.